He called her a pregnant cow, too stupid to notice. He texted those exact words to his mistress while his wife was in the next room, folding baby clothes under a ceiling she had hand-painted with gold stars for their unborn son. He thought he was untouchable. A billionaire CEO with a private jet, 100 lawyers, and a mistress waiting for him in a suite in Geneva. His pregnant wife was just decoration, a bird in a gilded cage. But here's what he did not know. His wife had $80,000 hidden in a savings account he had never found. She had a best friend who worked as a paralegal, and she had just discovered that his affair was only the beginning. Underneath, the cheating was a crime worth $47 million. One phone call from his pregnant wife did not just expose his affair. It destroyed his entire empire. This is the story of how the woman he underestimated burned his world to the ground. It is not about revenge. It is not about money. It is about the moment a woman stops believing the lie that she is not enough. Amelia did not win because she was rich or powerful. She won because she refused to accept that silence was her only option. She had $80,000 her mama told her to save, a best friend who showed up every single time, and the kind of quiet courage that does not need applause to keep going. If there is one thing to carry with you from this story, let it be this. Never underestimate a woman who has been told she is too stupid to fight back. She is not stupid. She is paying attention, and she is making a plan. Now, if this story hit you the way it hit us, do us a small favor. Tap that like button. It takes 1 second, and it tells us you want more stories like this one. Drop a comment and tell us, what would you have done in Amelia's shoes? Would you have taken the $3 million deal, or would you have fought? We genuinely want to know. Everyone at that baby shower looked at Amelia Brooks Sterling and saw a woman who had everything. A billionaire husband, a penthouse on Park Avenue, a baby on the way. And 4 days ago, she would have believed them. But here's the thing about perfect lives. They do not crack quietly. They shatter. And the sound is loud enough to bring down an empire. The scent of 1,000 white roses flown in that morning from Ecuador filled the penthouse like a sweet, suffocating fog. 40 guests moved through the sprawling living room, champagne flutes catching the afternoon light, their laughter, a soundtrack of privilege and ease. The caterer, hired from a Michelin-starred restaurant in Tribeca, circulated trays of bite-sized delicacies that cost more per plate than most people spent on a week of groceries. Amelia stood near the window, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other holding a glass of sparkling water she had barely touched. 7 months pregnant with a boy they had already named Spencer. She smiled at every guest who approached. She accepted every compliment about how she was glowing. She played the part with the effortless grace of a woman who had spent 5 years perfecting it. Under the table where the gift bags sat, in neat rows, her hands were trembling. Alexander Sterling arrived 20 minutes late, which was early by his standards. He swept into the room the way he swept into every room, as if the air itself rearranged to make space for him. 38 years old, 6'2", jaw cut from marble, and eyes the color of a stormy sea. He wore a navy suit that cost more than Amelia had earned in a year of teaching high school art in Columbus, Ohio. That felt like another lifetime now. He crossed the room to her, slid his arm around her waist, and pressed his lips to her temple. The gesture was practiced and smooth, like a handshake between diplomats. "Sorry I'm late, my love." Board meeting ran over. He turned to the room and raised his glass. "I want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate the most important thing in my life. My incredible wife and our son. Amelia, you are the most beautiful woman in any room, And Spencer is the luckiest kid in the world to have you as his mother. Everyone raised their glasses. Women whispered about how lucky she was. Men clapped Alexander on the back and told him he had it all figured out. Amelia smiled. She said thank you. She squeezed his hand. And she thought about the text message she had found 4 days ago on his iPad. The one from a contact, saved simply as K, the one that read, "Do not worry about the pregnant cow. She is too stupid to notice anything, the pregnant cow." Those 3 words had detonated inside her like a bomb on a quiet Tuesday evening, and the shrapnel was still tearing through her 4 days later. She had not slept more than 2 hours a night since. She had not cried. She had not screamed or thrown anything or confronted him. Something far more dangerous than rage had taken root inside her. Something cold and patient and calculating. Something that scared her a little when she caught it staring back at her from the bathroom mirror at 3 in the morning. But she was getting ahead of herself. To understand how Amelia Brooks Sterling, a former high school art teacher from Columbus, Ohio, brought down one of the most powerful men on Wall Street, you have to go back to that Tuesday. You have to go back to the nursery with the hand-painted constellations on the ceiling. You have to understand what it feels like to have your entire world rewritten in the span of 2 text messages. It was a Tuesday evening in late August, the kind of humid, heavy New York evening where the city feels like it is breathing on you. Amelia was in the nursery, folding baby clothes she had spent the afternoon organizing by size and color. The walls were navy blue, and across the ceiling she had painted the constellations herself, Orion and Cassiopeia, and the Big Dipper in metallic gold paint that caught the light like real stars. It was the one room in the penthouse that felt entirely hers. Everything else, the Italian marble, the custom furniture, the art collection, worth more than some country's GDP, that was Alexander's world. But the nursery was hers and Spencer's. She was folding a tiny onesie with little rockets on it when Alexander's iPad lit up on the dresser. It was synced to his personal phone. Something he had set up months ago and apparently forgotten about. The notification sat on the lock screen like a grenade with the pin pulled. A message from Kay last night was everything. Geneva cannot come soon enough. Amelia's hands stopped moving. She stared at the screen. The little rocket onesie still in her fingers. Her first instinct was denial. Immediate, almost physical. It is a work thing. A client. An investor. It is nothing. She almost put the iPad down. Her fingers were actually moving to set it on the dresser and walk away to go back to folding tiny clothes for her tiny son and pretending the world was still the shape she believed it to be. Then the second message appeared. Do not worry about the pregnant cow. She is too stupid to notice anything. Amelia read it twice, 3 times. The words did not change. They sat on the screen, glowing in the dim nursery light, casual and cruel and absolute. The pregnant cow. She is too stupid to notice. It was not just the affair. Affair she had been raised to understand, if not accept. Her own mother, God rest her soul, had once told her, during a rare moment of raw honesty, men with money, baby girl, they stray. It is what they do. What matters is what you do about it. But this was not straying. This was contempt. This was a man and his mistress laughing at her, reducing her to a joke. An animal. A stupid, pregnant, oblivious animal pinned up in a luxury apartment while her husband flew around the world with another woman. Something shifted inside Amelia in that moment. It was not dramatic. There was no crack of thunder or rush of adrenaline. It was quieter than that. It was the sound of a door closing. The door to the version of herself that trusted, the version that believed. The version that had spent 5 years smiling at fundraisers and hosting dinner parties and slowly, imperceptibly, disappearing. She picked up the iPad. She entered the passcode, the one Alexander used for everything because he was too arrogant to think anyone would look. 0915, his birthday. And she started reading. What she found in the next 45 minutes changed everything. 6 months of messages between Alexander and Kay, whose full name turned out to be Katerina Voss. 6 months of hotel confirmations in Paris, Dubai, London, Geneva, always booked under shell company names. A jewelry receipt from Graf for a $45,000 canary diamond necklace. Amelia had never received a canary diamond necklace. There were emails and a secondary account Alexander had forgotten to log out of on a laptop in his study. Love letters, essentially. Promises of a future together. References to our place in Italy. Plans for when this is all sorted, as if Amelia and Spencer and 5 years of marriage were a clerical error to be resolved. She sat on the floor of the nursery, surrounded by baby clothes and gold-painted stars, and she read every single message. She screenshotted everything and uploaded the images to a cloud account Alexander did not know existed. She was methodical about it, thorough. She did not miss a single thread, and she did not cry, not once. When she was finished, she placed the iPad exactly where she had found it. She picked up the rocket onesie from the floor. She folded it neatly and placed it in the dresser drawer. Then she turned off the nursery light and walked to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of milk because the baby books said calcium was important in the 3rd trimester. She stood at the kitchen island in the dark penthouse, drinking milk, and she made a plan. Not a plan for crying or confronting or begging for an explanation. A plan for war. But first, she needed to wait. Alexander was leaving for Geneva on Friday. A business trip, he said. A crucial meeting with the Swiss banking consortium. She now knew exactly what that trip really was. And she knew that the best thing she could do, the smartest thing, was to let him go. Let him fly across the Atlantic to his mistress. Let him feel safe and confident and untouchable. Because the moment he was in the air, she was going to start dismantling his world. Thursday night, 2 days after the discovery, they sat across from each other at the dining table. Alexander had brought home takeout from her favorite Italian place, a gesture she now recognized as guilt, masquerading as thoughtfulness. Geneva is going to be quick, he said, twirling linguine around his fork. The Swiss bankers are ready to close on the European credit line. This deal could redefine Sterling Global's presence on the continent for the next decade. He reached across the table and took her hand. Those eyes. The same stormy blue-gray eyes she had fallen in love with at a gallery opening in Brooklyn 5 years ago, when she was 27 and he was 33, and the world seemed like it was made of nothing but possibility. She had been standing in front of a painting by an artist, nobody famous, and he had walked up to her and said, "You are looking at that painting the way I wish someone would look at me." It was the cheesiest line she had ever heard, and she had laughed so hard she had spilled her wine, and somehow that had been the beginning of everything. Those same eyes were looking at her now with a warmth and sincerity that she might have believed 4 days ago. "I will only be gone 48 hours, he said. "I will be back before you and Spencer even have a chance to miss me." Amelia squeezed his hand and smiled her most convincing smile. "Of course, darling. Business is business. Spencer and I will be right here waiting." That night she lay in bed beside him, listening to his breathing slow into sleep. Her hand was on her belly where Spencer was doing his nightly gymnastics routine. She thought about the man lying next to her. She thought about the man she had married. She was no longer sure they were the same person. The Alexander she had married had been different. Not perfect, never perfect, but genuine. He had come from nothing, a working-class kid from Scranton, Pennsylvania, raised by a single mother who worked double shifts as a nurse. He had built Sterling Global from the ground up through sheer force of will and intelligence and a kind of relentless ambition that was, in those early years, inspiring rather than frightening. The first 3 years of their marriage had been good, really good. He had been attentive and romantic and present. He had rubbed her feet without being asked. He had left stupid little notes on the bathroom mirror. He had once driven 4 hours in a snowstorm to bring her the specific brand of ginger tea she liked when she had the flu. She did not know exactly when that man had disappeared. Power did not corrupt all at once. It was more like erosion, a little more arrogance after each successful deal, a little more distance after each billion-dollar milestone, a little more certainty that the rules that applied to ordinary people no longer applied to him. By the time she noticed, the man she had married was a ghost inside the stranger she now shared a bed with. She closed her eyes and did not sleep. Friday morning, Alexander kissed her forehead at 6:30, told her he loved her, and walked out the door with a carry-on bag and a smile that no longer reached his eyes. Amelia waited exactly 15 minutes. Then she picked up her phone and called the one person in the world she trusted completely. Diane Castillo, known to everyone who loved her as Dee, arrived at the penthouse in 40 minutes flat. She was still wearing her work clothes from the small law firm in Queens where she worked as a paralegal. Her hair was in a messy bun. She was carrying a gas station coffee in one hand and a bag of sour gummy worms in the other, because that was what Dee grabbed when she was in a hurry, which was always. She took one look at Amelia's face and said, "Who do I need to kill?" Dee Castillo was 35 years old, a single mom to a 6-year-old daughter named Lily, and she had been Amelia's best friend since their sophomore year at Ohio State. They had been assigned as roommates in a cramped dorm room that smelled like old carpet and ambition, and they had been inseparable ever since. Dee was everything Amelia was not. Loud where Amelia was quiet, blunt where Amelia was diplomatic. The kind of woman who said exactly what she thought, and then said it again, louder for the people in the back. She was also the most loyal human being Amelia had ever known. When Amelia married Alexander and moved into the world of private jets and charity galas, Dee had never once made her feel guilty about it. She had shown up to the wedding in a dress she bought on sale at Nordstrom Rack and danced until 2 in the morning and told Alexander to his face, "You better treat my girl right or I will make your life a living nightmare." Alexander had laughed. He had thought she was joking. Dee had not been joking. Amelia led her to the kitchen island and opened her laptop. She showed her everything. The text messages, the emails, the hotel confirmations, the jewelry receipt for the $45,000 necklace, and those 3 words, the pregnant cow. She is too stupid to notice. Dee's reaction was immediate and volcanic. She paced the length of the kitchen, her heels clicking on the marble floor, unleashing a torrent of profanity so creative and so sustained that Amelia, despite everything, almost laughed. Dee called Alexander names that had never been combined in the English language before. She punched a throw pillow. She kicked the base of the kitchen island and hurt her toe and kept cursing without missing a beat. Then she cried. Dee, who never cried, who had gone through her own divorce without shedding a public tear, stood in the middle of Alexander Sterling's $1 million kitchen and cried for her best friend. And then she stopped. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. She took a breath, and the paralegal kicked in. "Okay," she said. "We are not doing this the way he expects. We are not crying and throwing his clothes out the window. That is what he is prepared for. That is the playbook for the hysterical pregnant wife, and he has a counter for every move in that playbook. We are going to be smart, smarter than him, which honestly should not be that hard because the man is clearly thinking with the wrong body part. She sat down across from Amelia and pulled the laptop toward her. First things first, money. You cannot fight a war without money. What do you have? Amelia hesitated. This was the part she had never told anyone, not even Dee. He controls everything. The bank accounts, the credit cards, the investments. My personal credit card has a $5,000 limit. $5,000 against a billionaire. That is like bringing a squirt gun to a forest fire. But, Amelia said, and she paused, making a decision that would alter the course of everything. I have $80,000 in a savings account he does not know about. Dee stared at her. $80,000? Hidden? How? My mom. Before she died, she sat me down and told me something. She said, a woman should always have her own money, baby girl. Always. No matter how much she loves her husband, no matter how rich he is, you keep something for yourself. You put it somewhere he cannot touch, and you never, ever tell him about it. Amelia's voice cracked slightly on the word mom. I saved it from my teaching salary before I quit to be Mrs. Sterling, $1,500 a month for 4 years. I never touched it. Dee was quiet for a moment. Then she said, your mama was a genius. Rest her soul. She paused. 80,000 is not a lot against a billionaire, but it is enough to start a war. They spent the rest of the morning building a battle plan on Dee's yellow legal pad. The plan had 3 pillars. First, Amelia needed a divorce attorney. Someone good, someone discreet, someone who would not be intimidated by the Sterling name. Second, they needed to gather evidence, not just of the affair, but of everything. Bank statements, tax returns, property records, anything that could give Amelia leverage in what was going to be the most asymmetric legal fight in the history of New York divorce court. Third, and this was Dee's instinct talking, they needed to follow the money. Something about this does not feel right, Dee said, chewing on a gummy worm. The shell company names on the hotel bookings, the hidden email account. This is not just a guy hiding a girlfriend. This is a guy hiding a system. And where there is a system, there is money. Amelia looked at her. You think he is doing something illegal? I think a man who builds an elaborate infrastructure of deception to hide his mistress is probably using that same infrastructure for other things, things that might be a lot more serious than an affair. She was right, but neither of them knew yet just how right she was. Monday morning, Amelia met a divorce attorney named Sandra Palmer at a diner in Midtown. She chose a diner because she was afraid to be seen entering a law office. She chose Midtown because it was anonymous enough to disappear in. She wore sunglasses and a baseball cap, which made her feel like a character in a movie. Except in movies, the pregnant woman was never the one doing the investigating. Sandra Palmer was in her late 50s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded Amelia of her 11th grade math teacher. Dee's boss had recommended her. She is not flashy, he had said, but she is very, very good. Sandra listened to Amelia's story without interrupting. She looked at the screenshots on Amelia's phone. She asked questions that were precise and practical, nothing about feelings or fairness, just facts and strategy. You are entitled to equitable distribution under New York law, Sandra said. With his net worth, you are looking at a significant settlement. But I need to be honest with you. A man like Alexander Sterling will hire an army of lawyers. The best in the country. This will not be a negotiation. It will be a war of attrition. And wars cost money. She paused. How much do you have independent access to? 80,000. Sandra's face did not change, but the pause before she spoke told Amelia everything. That is a start. But it will not last long against a billionaire's legal team. My advice is this: do not tip your hand yet. He does not know you know, correct? He knows I am suspicious. He does not know how much I know. Then we work fast. While he is still underestimating you, which frankly seems to be his specialty, we gather everything we can. Bank statements, tax returns, property records, corporate filings, anything with his name or his signature. The moment he knows you are building a case, he will lock down everything, every account, every document, every avenue of information. We need to be ahead of that. He is in Geneva right now, Amelia said. He will be back Wednesday night. Then you have 2 days. Use them. Meanwhile, Dee was doing her own digging. During her lunch break at the law firm, she accessed the legal database her firm used for research and ran a search on Sterling Global. What she found made her forget about her turkey sandwich entirely. Sterling Global had been named in several civil filings over the past 2 years related to suspicious offshore transactions. The filings had all been settled quietly, out of court, which in the legal world was often code for someone paid a lot of money to make a problem disappear. There is something rotten in that company, Dee told Amelia over the phone that afternoon. This is not just about a mistress. There is money moving in ways that do not add up. We need someone who can read financial documents the way I read legal filings. Someone who knows where to look for the bodies. Do you know someone like that? Maybe. Let me make a call. But before Dee could make that call, Amelia made a mistake. It was a mistake born of exhaustion and loneliness, and the desperate human need to be heard by someone who was not a lawyer or a paralegal. It was a mistake that nearly cost her everything. She called Pastor James Walker. Pastor Walker had been the Sterling's family pastor for 4 years. His church, Grace Fellowship, was a large non-denominational congregation on the Upper East Side that catered to the kind of wealthy New Yorkers who wanted their faith comfortable and their sermons short. Alexander had been a member since before the marriage, drawn less by spiritual hunger and more by the networking opportunities. The congregation read like a Fortune 500 directory, but Alexander was more than just a member. He was the church's most generous donor. 6 months earlier, he had pledged $2 million to fund a new community center, a project that had become Pastor Walker's consuming passion. The groundbreaking ceremony was scheduled for October. Architectural plans were drawn. Contractors were hired. The $2 million was the cornerstone of everything. Amelia did not know any of this. She knew Pastor Walker as a warm, grandfatherly man with kind eyes and a reassuring voice. She knew him as the man who had officiated their wedding, who had prayed over her when she first learned she was pregnant, who had held her hand in his office and told her that God's plan was always good, even when life was hard. She trusted him the way you trust the people who stand at the front of a church and tell you they speak for something bigger than themselves. On Wednesday evening, while Alexander was still in Geneva, Amelia called the pastor and asked to meet. She drove to the church in the fading light of a late August day, her belly pressing against the steering wheel, and she sat in his office, a warm, wood-paneled room that smelled like old books and coffee, and she told him the truth. Not all of it. She did not mention Dee or Sandra Palmer or the screenshots saved to a cloud account. She did not mention the offshore transactions or the forensic accounting plan. She told him only about the affair. The text messages, the mistress, and those 3 words that had cracked her world open. He called me a pregnant cow, she said, and her voice broke. He told his mistress I was too stupid to notice. She cried. For the first time since finding those messages, she cried in front of another person, not the controlled tears of a woman with a plan, but the raw, gasping sobs of a woman whose heart had been shattered by the person who was supposed to protect it. Pastor Walker listened. He held her hands. He prayed. His voice was gentle and his words were practiced. The words of a man who had counseled hundreds of couples through crisis. Marriages can survive infidelity, Amelia. With faith and counseling, there is always a path to healing. God never gives us more than we can bear. She drove home feeling lighter, not healed, not even close, but lighter. Like she had set down a weight she had been carrying alone for days. Maybe she was not completely alone in this. Maybe there were still good people in the world who could be trusted. She was wrong. Wednesday night, 10:47. Alexander came home from what he claimed was a late dinner with clients. Though Amelia now knew he had landed back from Geneva that afternoon. He walked into the bedroom where she was propped up against pillows, reading a book about infant sleep training that she could not concentrate on. He sat on the edge of the bed and took off his watch, the $60,000 Patek Philippe she had given him for their 3rd anniversary, back when giving him expensive things still felt like love instead of tribute. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, his voice carrying that particular warmth he deployed when he wanted something. "Pastor Walker called me today." The book almost slipped from Amelia's hands. She caught it. She kept her face neutral. "He is worried about you," Alexander continued, his tone dripping with manufactured concern. "He says you have been stressed and emotional, having some anxiety about the pregnancy. Apparently, you were pretty upset when you talked to him." Every word was a precision strike. Stressed, emotional, anxiety, upset. He was not just reporting what the pastor had said. He was building a narrative, a diagnosis, a framework that would follow her into any courtroom, any custody hearing, any conversation where her credibility might matter. "Honestly, babe, I have noticed it too. You have seemed distant lately, almost paranoid. Maybe we should talk to your doctor about adjusting your prenatal supplements or something. I just want you healthy, for you and for Spencer." He kissed her forehead, the same forehead he had kissed at the baby shower in front of 40 people, the same gesture, the same practiced tenderness, and Amelia felt her skin crawl. He walked into the bathroom. She heard the shower turn on. She sat perfectly still, the sleep training book open in her lap, and she felt the full weight of what had just happened settle on her like a physical thing. The pastor had called Alexander, not the details of the affair, not the specific accusations, but enough. He had told Alexander that his wife was anxious, emotional, stressed, and Alexander, with the speed and precision of a man who manipulated people for a living, had immediately weaponized it. He was not just covering his tracks. He was laying groundwork. If this ever went to court, if there was ever a custody battle, he would have a pastor, a man of God, ready to testify that Amelia Sterling had been showing signs of mental instability months before the divorce. Pregnancy hormones, he would say. She was not herself. She was paranoid, seeing things that were not there. It was gaslighting elevated to an art form, and it had been handed to him on a silver platter by a man Amelia had trusted with her deepest pain. She picked up her phone with hands that shook so badly she had to type her text message 3 times. 2D. The pastor told him. He called Alexander. "I am an idiot." D's reply came in 11 seconds. "You are not an idiot. He is a snake in a collar. Now we know who we cannot trust." "That is valuable information. Come to my place tomorrow. We regroup." Amelia stared at the message. D was right. This was information. Painful, humiliating information, but information nonetheless. Add it to the list. The pastor was compromised. One more person she could not trust. One more door that had closed. But the damage went beyond the loss of a confidant. Alexander now knew she was suspicious. He did not know how much she knew. He did not know about the $80,000, or Sandra Palmer, or the cloud account full of screenshots, but the element of surprise had taken a bullet. The clock that was already ticking had just gotten faster. She turned off the light and lay in the dark, listening to the shower run, and she tried to calculate how many moves she had left. Thursday morning. While Alexander was at the office, Amelia went to Dee's apartment in Queens. It was a two-bedroom on the third floor of a walk-up that smelled like the Indian restaurant downstairs and the lavender air freshener Dee used to combat it. The furniture was second-hand. The refrigerator had Lily's drawings held up with alphabet magnets. It was the opposite of the penthouse in every possible way. And for the first time in days, Amelia felt like she could breathe. She sat on Dee's couch with a yellow legal pad and a peanut butter toast that Dee had made before leaving for work, and she made a list. What he knows: I am suspicious. I am emotional. The pastor has confirmed this for him. What he does not know: the $80,000, Sandra Palmer. Dee's discovery about the offshore filings. Every screenshot I took saved to a cloud account he cannot access. The fact that I have spent the last week becoming a different person than the one he thinks I am. She called Sandra Palmer. He knows I am suspicious, but he thinks it is just hormonal jealousy. He does not know about anything else. He flew back from Geneva last night. What do I do? Sandra's voice was calm and direct. Let the dust settle for a moment. Do not give him any reason to escalate his surveillance of you. This weekend, go through the motions. Be the wife he expects. But here is what I need you to do. Get into his home office and photograph everything you can. Bank statements, account numbers, investment documents, anything with a signature or a dollar amount. And Amelia, this is important. Do not use your phone to photograph anything. If he is monitoring your cloud accounts or your phone backup, he will see the images. Buy a cheap digital camera with cash. Nothing that syncs to anything. A cheap digital camera, Amelia repeated. From where? CVS, Walgreens. Anywhere. Pay cash. Leave no trail. That afternoon, Amelia walked to a CVS 3 blocks from Dee's apartment and bought a $29 digital camera with a $20 bill and a 10. She stood in the checkout line, behind a teenager, buying energy drinks, and an elderly man buying cough syrup, holding this ridiculous little camera, and she thought about how 6 months ago she had been choosing between 2 couture gowns for a charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum. Now she was buying spy equipment at a drugstore. She almost laughed. Almost. Spencer kicked, and she took it as encouragement. That night, back at the penthouse, she sat across from Alexander at dinner and performed the role of the slightly tired, slightly emotional, thoroughly unsuspecting pregnant wife. She asked about his day. She told him about a funny thing she had read in her pregnancy book. She let him rub her feet while they watched television. She felt like an actress in a play she had not auditioned for. He was performing too, she realized. The attentive husband, the devoted father-to-be. They were 2 people playing roles for an audience of 1, each watching the other for cracks in the performance. It was exhausting. It was also, in a grim way, clarifying. This was what their marriage had become. Not a partnership, a performance. And the only question left was which of them would drop the mask first. Friday morning, Alexander left for the office at 7. He kissed her forehead. He told her he loved her. He walked out the door. And Amelia Brooks Sterling went to war. The moment Alexander's car turned the corner of Park Avenue, Amelia was in his home office. She had been in this room thousands of times. It was where Alexander worked in the evenings, a mahogany-paneled study with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with books he had never read, a massive desk that had once belonged to a railroad baron, and a view of Central Park that made you feel like you owned the city. She had brought him coffee in this room. She had kissed him goodnight in this room. She had never once thought to look through his files. Now she moved through the space with the methodical calm of a woman who had spent the past week learning to think like someone she used to trust. Sandra Palmer's instructions were clear. Photograph everything: bank statements, quarterly reports, anything with a name, an account number, a signature. Be thorough, be fast, be invisible. She opened the filing cabinet with a key she had found months ago in a kitchen drawer and never thought twice about. Inside were hanging folders organized with the precision of a man who trusted his own invincibility. Monthly statements from 3 different banks. Quarterly reports from Sterling Global marked confidential. Tax documents going back 5 years. She photographed everything with the cheap CVS camera, the shutter sound absurdly loud in the quiet apartment. In the bottom drawer, beneath a stack of old magazines that served as camouflage, she found something else. A laptop. Not his main computer, which sat open on the desk, but a second one, smaller, hidden in a false bottom of the drawer. It was a sleek, custom-looking device she had never seen before. She called Dee. He has a second laptop, hidden. I cannot get past the password screen. Do not try, Dee said immediately. If he has security software, which a man like that absolutely does, it will log any failed login attempts. He will know someone tried to get in. Just photograph it. The serial number, the brand, everything visible. Document that it exists. That is ammunition all by itself. An innocent man does not hide laptops in false-bottomed drawers. Amelia photographed the laptop from every angle, then replaced it exactly as she had found it, down to the angle of the magazines stacked on top. Saturday brought the next piece of the puzzle. Dee had made her phone call, and it had led to a man named Frank Hobson. Frank Hobson was 55 years old, semi-retired, and not remotely what Amelia had expected. She had imagined someone sleek and sharp, the forensic accounting equivalent of a surgeon. Frank was more like a rumpled bear who happened to be brilliant. He was overweight, perpetually clutching a cup of coffee, and he worked out of a home office in Hoboken, New Jersey. That looked like a paper recycling center had exploded inside a room. Stacks of old case files covered every surface. A cat named Deficit sat on top of a filing cabinet and watched visitors with supreme indifference. But Frank Hobson had spent 22 years in the IRS Criminal Investigations Division. He had put more white-collar criminals in federal prison than most prosecutors. He had retired 3 years ago, allegedly to do crossword puzzles and watch true crime documentaries. But Dee's law firm had used him as an expert witness 2 years back, and he owed her a favor. I do not do favors, Frank had told Dee on the phone. I do puzzles, and this sounds like a good puzzle. Dee brought him to her apartment on Saturday morning, where Amelia had spread every photographed document across the kitchen table like a war map. Frank sat down, put on his reading glasses, accepted a cup of coffee that Dee made exactly the way he liked it, which was black and strong enough to dissolve a spoon, and began reviewing the documents. He was quiet for a long time. Amelia and Dee sat across from him, barely breathing, watching his eyes move across the pages. His expression gave nothing away. He could have been reading a grocery list. Then he put down his coffee and said, "Yeah, there is smoke here, a lot of smoke." He pointed to a series of transactions on one of the bank statements. These payments: consulting fees to companies I have never heard of, finder's fees for deals that do not appear in the quarterly reports. The amounts are not huge individually, 100,000 here, 200,000 there, but they are regular, monthly, and they are going to entities that, based on the names and registration numbers, look like shell corporations. Shell corporations, Amelia repeated. Companies that exist on paper, but do not actually do anything. No employees, no office, no real business activity. They exist for one purpose, to move money from point A to point B without anyone seeing it. It is a classic structure for embezzlement. Embezzlement, Dee said. You mean he is stealing from his own company? I mean there is smoke, Frank said carefully. I can see the patterns. I can smell the fire, but I cannot prove it from these documents alone. These are breadcrumbs. I need the actual transaction records from inside the company, wire transfer confirmations, board authorizations, the internal ledgers that show where the money actually went. Someone inside Sterling Global has to open that door for me. How long would it take to build a case? Amelia asked. With inside access? 2, maybe 3 weeks. I could map every dollar. And without it? Frank shrugged. Months, maybe never. A good defense lawyer would tear apart everything I have right now. These are external documents, bank statements, and quarterly reports. A defense attorney would say they are incomplete, taken out of context, misinterpreted by a retired accountant with too much time on his hands. I need corroboration from inside the machine. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Amelia did not have that kind of time. She could feel the window closing with every hour that passed. Then, on Sunday, she found the thread that would unravel everything. She was reviewing Alexander's personal email screenshots on her laptop at Dee's kitchen table, going through them for the 3rd time, when she noticed something she had initially overlooked. Buried in a chain of forwarded messages was a property tax notification. It had been forwarded from one of Alexander's secondary email accounts to another, a detail that suggested he was trying to keep it away from his primary accounts. The notification was for a property at an address in Portofino, Italy. The owner was listed as Apex Holdings, LLC, registered in the British Virgin Islands. Amelia had never heard of Apex Holdings. She had never been to Portofino, and Alexander had never mentioned owning property in Italy. She sent the information to Frank. His callback came within the hour, and when she answered, the bored, rumpled retiree was gone. In his place was the sharp-edged IRS investigator who had spent 2 decades hunting financial predators. Apex Holdings purchased a villa in Portofino 9 months ago for 25 million euros, Frank said, speaking faster than she had ever heard him. The purchase was funded by a series of wire transfers that trace back through 3 separate shell companies, each registered in a different tax haven: the Cayman Islands, Panama, and the British Virgin Islands. When you follow the money backward through those shells, it connects to accounts that are consistent with the suspicious transactions I identified in Sterling Global's bank statements. In English, Frank. He bought a 25 million euro villa in Italy with money he stole from his own company, and he tried to hide it behind so many layers of corporate fiction that no one would ever find it. The room went quiet. Dee sat down slowly. Amelia felt Spencer kick, hard, as if he could sense the gravity of what was happening. This is not a man hiding a girlfriend, Frank continued. This is a man building a new life with stolen money. We are talking about embezzlement on a massive scale, potentially tens of millions of dollars siphoned from Sterling Global over a period of years. Can you prove it? Amelia asked. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, flat, hollow. I can see the smoke, I can smell the fire, but to prove it, to build a case that would stand up in front of the SEC or a federal judge, I need someone inside Sterling Global, a CFO, a comptroller, someone with access to the internal financial systems who can verify that these external transactions match the internal records. Without that, a good defense attorney will say these are coincidences. Personal notes, unverified assumptions. Amelia stared at the property tax notification on her screen. A villa in Portofino, 25 million euros. Built for Katerina Voss, she was certain. A love nest funded with money stolen from the company that was supposed to be Spencer's legacy. I need you to document everything you can from what we have, she told Frank. Build the best preliminary report you can. Map the shell companies, the wire transfers, the timeline. Make it as clear and as damning as possible. And then what? Then I am going to find someone inside that building who has a conscience. She hung up and looked at Dee. We need a name. Someone at Sterling Global. Someone high enough to have access to the internal records. Someone who might be willing to talk. Dee was already thinking. The CFO, Nathan Cross. I have seen his name on some of the filings at the firm. He signed off on a lot of the quarterly reports. Do you think he knows what Alexander is doing? I think a CFO who does not know his CEO is stealing tens of millions, is either complicit or incompetent. Either way, he is someone we need to talk to. But before they could approach Nathan Cross, before they could take the next step in a plan that was becoming larger and more dangerous by the hour, life reminded Amelia that she was not just a woman at war. She was a mother, and her baby needed her. Monday morning, Amelia went to her scheduled prenatal appointment at the obstetrics practice on the Upper East Side. She went alone because Alexander was at the office and because going alone had become normal, one of those small surrenders that had accumulated so gradually she barely noticed them anymore. The waiting room was full of pregnant women in various stages of expectation, leafing through parenting magazines and scrolling their phones. Amelia filled out the standard forms and waited for her name to be called, feeling for all the world like the most ordinary woman in the room. Nobody here knew that she was sitting on evidence of a multi-million-dollar embezzlement. Nobody knew that her husband had a mistress in Europe and a villa he had bought with stolen money. Nobody knew about the cheap CVS camera, or the forensic accountant in Hoboken, or the text messages that had rewritten her entire life. To them, she was just another pregnant woman waiting for an ultrasound. There was a strange comfort in that. The technician was a young woman with gentle hands and a cheerful voice. She spread the cold gel on Amelia's belly and pressed the ultrasound wand to her skin. And there he was, on the screen. Spencer, his tiny heart beating, his miniature fist clenched near his face, his body curled in the universal posture of someone not ready to face the world just yet. There is your boy, the technician said. Looking good. Then she paused. She moved the wand slightly. She stared at the screen with an expression that shifted almost imperceptibly from cheerful to focused. Just going to take another look at something, she said, her voice still bright, but with a new, careful quality that made Amelia's stomach tighten. She repositioned the wand, stared at the screen, then she said the words that no pregnant woman ever wants to hear. I am going to have the doctor come in and take a look. Nothing to worry about. Just want a second opinion on something. Nothing to worry about. That phrase, in a medical setting, was almost always a lie. Dr. Mitchell came in 4 minutes later. She was a calm, experienced woman in her 50s who had delivered hundreds of babies and had mastered the art of the reassuring face. She reviewed the ultrasound images with the focused attention of someone reading a very important document. Amelia, we are seeing an irregularity in the baby's heart rhythm. It could be nothing. These things often resolve on their own in the 3rd trimester, but I want you to see a specialist this week, a pediatric cardiologist, just to be safe. What does irregularity mean? Amelia's voice sounded far away, like someone else was speaking through her mouth. Is he okay? It means we need more information before I can answer that question. I do not want you to panic. Most of these irregularities are benign and resolve without any intervention. But I do need you to take care of yourself. She paused and looked at Amelia with an intensity that went beyond medical. Your blood pressure is elevated. Your stress markers are high. Whatever is happening in your life right now, Amelia, your baby needs you to find some calm. Whatever is happening in your life right now, if only she knew. Amelia thanked the doctor. She got dressed. She walked through the waiting room, past all the other pregnant women with their magazines and their phones and their ordinary worries. And she got in her car and she drove. She did not go home. She did not go to Dee's. She drove to a parking lot behind a Kroger grocery store in a neighborhood she did not know, and she parked and she turned off the engine and she sat there. For 45 minutes, Amelia Brooks Sterling sat in a parking lot behind a grocery store with her hands on her belly, and she came apart. Not about Alexander, not about the affair or the money or the villa in Portofino or the word cow burned into her brain like a brand. About Spencer, about the tiny heart beating inside her that might not be beating right. About the fact that her baby might be sick and she was utterly, completely alone. She could not call her husband because her husband was the enemy. She could not call her mother because her mother was dead. She could not call her pastor because her pastor was a traitor. She could not call a single member of the glittering social circle that had surrounded her for 5 years because every one of them was Alexander's friend first, and she had learned the hard way what happened when she trusted the wrong person. She had never felt so alone in her life, not when her mother died, not when she left Ohio for New York, not even on the night she found the text messages. This was a different kind of alone. This was the alone of a mother who cannot protect her child. She called Dee. Her voice was barely a whisper. Something might be wrong with the baby. Dee did not ask questions. She did not say she was in the middle of something at work. She said, "Where are you?" And when Amelia told her, she said, "Stay there. I am coming." 25 minutes later, Dee's 10-year-old Honda Civic pulled into the parking lot. She got out, walked to Amelia's car, opened the passenger door, and slid in. She did not speak immediately. She took Amelia's hand and held it. "Tell me," she said. Amelia told her about the ultrasound, about the irregularity, about the specialist appointment, about sitting in this parking lot for 45 minutes, unable to move, wondering if she was destroying her baby by fighting this war. "Maybe I should stop," Amelia said. "All of it, the lawyer, Frank, the investigation. Maybe I should just take whatever Alexander offers and go home to Ohio and focus on Spencer. Maybe fighting this is killing my baby." Dee was quiet. She did not rush to contradict or reassure. She sat with the weight of it. Then she said something that Amelia would remember for the rest of her life. "Do you remember sophomore year when I got mono and missed 3 weeks of class and I was sure I was going to fail out? And you showed up at my dorm room every single night with your notes and flashcards and that disgusting green tea you swore would fix everything?" Amelia almost smiled. Almost. "It did fix everything. No, you fixed everything. You fixed because that is what you do. You show up, you fight, and your baby is going to be fine because he has a mother who will burn down the whole world to protect him." Dee squeezed her hand. "Now let us go get some food because you are eating for a future world changer and a parking lot behind a Kroger is no place for royalty." They went to a diner. Amelia ordered a grilled cheese and tomato soup, the exact meal her mother used to make her when she was sick as a child. She ate every bite. Spencer kicked the entire time, steady and strong, as if he was saying, I am right here, Mom. I am not going anywhere. At the table, over coffee that Dee drank and decaf tea that Amelia sipped, they made a pact. They would keep fighting, but they would also take care of themselves. No more 18-hour research marathons. No more skipping meals. Amelia would see the specialist, and she would be honest with her doctor about her stress levels, without revealing the specifics. One step at a time, Dee said. We eat the elephant one bite at a time. That is a terrible metaphor. I am a paralegal, not a poet. Now finish your soup. If you have ever been in a situation where everything felt hopeless, where the walls were closing in and the odds were stacked so high against you that fighting seemed pointless, then you know the moment that changes everything. It is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is a phone call from a person you did not expect. Sometimes it is a door opening when every other door has slammed shut. For Amelia, that moment came on Tuesday morning when her phone rang with an unknown number from a Scranton area code. Amelia, honey, it is Margaret. Margaret Sterling's voice came through the phone with a quality Amelia had never heard before. Not the warm, grandmotherly tone she used at holiday dinners, not the tough, practical voice she deployed when something needed fixing. This was something else. This was fury, held under control so tight it vibrated. Margaret Sterling was 65 years old, and she was, in Amelia's opinion, the best person the Sterling family had ever produced. A former nurse who had worked double shifts for 20 years to raise Alexander alone after his father left when Alexander was 3. She still lived in the same modest house in Scranton, Pennsylvania, a 2-bedroom ranch with a chain-link fence, and a garden she tended with the same fierce discipline she applied to everything. She had refused every offer Alexander made to move her somewhere bigger or fancier. This is my home, she always said. I earned it. I am staying. She had welcomed Amelia into the family with open arms and the blunt warmth of a woman who did not waste time on pretense. She had told Amelia, at their first meeting, my son is smart and ambitious, and he can be very charming, but he can also be a horse's rear end. If he ever gives you trouble, you call me. Amelia had laughed at the time. She was not laughing now. I know about the woman, Margaret said. I have known since Easter. Amelia sat down on the edge of Dee's couch. Since Easter? He left his phone on the kitchen counter. When he went out to the car for more dinner rolls, I saw the messages. I did not see everything, but I saw enough. A woman's name, the kind of messages a married man has no business sending to anyone who is not his wife. Margaret, why did you not tell me? The older woman was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice cracked for the first time. Because I was a coward. Because I was afraid of losing him. He is my only child, Amelia. The only thing I have in this world besides this house and my garden. I confronted him in the driveway on Easter Sunday while you were inside doing the dishes. And he told me to mind my own business. He said if I interfered, he would cut me off completely. No visits, no phone calls, no relationship with the grandchild. She paused. He threatened to take away my grandchild before that baby was even born. My own son, and I was so afraid of losing them both that I stayed quiet. I have hated myself every single day since. Amelia closed her eyes. She understood fear. She understood the calculus of silence, the way you weigh what you might lose against what you might gain, and sometimes the math says, stay quiet and keep your head down. She had done that math herself for 5 years. What changed? Amelia asked. Why are you calling me now, Aunt? Because I talked to my sister last week. My sister Eleanor, you have met her. She asked me how you were doing, how the baby was, and I lied to her. I told her everything was wonderful. And when I hung up the phone, I looked at myself in the mirror, and I did not recognize the woman looking back. I raised that boy in a 2-bedroom house on a nurse's salary. I taught him that a man's word is his bond. I taught him that how you treat people, especially the people who trust you, that is the measure of who you are. Her voice hardened. And he turned into this, a man who cheats on his pregnant wife and calls her names I will not repeat. A man who threatens his own mother to keep her silent. That is not the boy I raised. That boy is gone. I do not know when I lost him, but he is gone. Margaret. I am done being afraid, Amelia. I have already lost my son. The boy I knew does not exist anymore, but my grandbaby exists. And you exist. And I will not stand by and watch him destroy the only family I have left. Then Margaret said something that changed the trajectory of everything. There is something you need to know. Alexander has a safe deposit box at First National Bank here in Scranton. He has had it since he was 25, before the marriage, before Sterling Global went public, before any of this. He rented it back when he was just a kid with big ideas and no money. How do you know about it? Because I co-signed the original rental agreement. He was 25, and he did not have enough credit history to rent a box on his own. He needed someone with an established banking relationship, so I signed. He probably forgot about that years ago. He thinks I do not know the box still exists. She paused. But a mother always knows. On Wednesday, Amelia and Dee drove to Scranton. It was a 2-hour drive on a gray, overcast day, the kind of weather that made the highway feel endless. Amelia drove because Dee's car was making a noise that neither of them could identify, and neither of them trusted. They stopped once for gas and once for the bathroom because Spencer was using Amelia's bladder as a trampoline. Margaret met them at the First National Bank on Lackawanna Avenue at 10 in the morning. She was dressed in what Amelia recognized as her Sunday best. A navy blue dress and low heels, and a pearl necklace that she had told Amelia was the only nice piece of jewelry she had ever owned. She had dressed up for this, as if going to the bank to betray her son's secrets was a solemn occasion that demanded respect. In a way, it was. The bank manager was a cautious man named Henderson, who clearly did not want to be in the middle of whatever this was. He listened to Margaret's claim of co-signer status. He reviewed Amelia's marriage certificate and identification. He made 2 phone calls to the bank's legal department. He disappeared into an office for 30 minutes. They waited in a row of plastic chairs near the vault entrance. Margaret sat with her back straight and her hands folded in her lap. Dee chewed her thumbnail. Amelia felt Spencer doing somersaults. Finally, Henderson returned. I have confirmed that, Mrs. Margaret Sterling is listed as a co-signer on box number 417. And as the legal spouse of the primary renter, Mrs. Amelia Sterling also has access rights under New York banking law. He looked deeply uncomfortable. If you would follow me. The safe deposit box was a medium-sized steel container, unremarkable from the outside. Henderson placed it on the viewing table and left the room, closing the door behind him with obvious relief. Margaret looked at Amelia. Open it. Inside the box, neatly arranged with the precision of a man who trusted his own invincibility, were the following items. 2 backup hard drives, black, unmarked, each about the size of a deck of cards. A second passport in the name of David Allen Brooks, with Alexander's photograph. Property documents for an entity called Apex Holdings, LLC, registered in the British Virgin Islands, and a leather-bound notebook, the kind you would buy at a stationery store, filled cover to cover with Alexander's handwriting. Amelia picked up the notebook and opened it. The pages were filled with columns of numbers, dates, amounts, account numbers, entity names, transaction after transaction, meticulously recorded in Alexander's neat, angular handwriting. It was a ledger, a personal record of every financial transaction he had made through his network of shell companies. He had documented his own crimes, written them down by hand in a leather notebook kept in a safe deposit box in his hometown. The arrogance of it took her breath away. He was so certain that no one would ever look, so certain that his mother did not know about the box, so certain that his pregnant wife was too stupid to find it. Dee looked over her shoulder and whispered a word that was not appropriate for a bank. Frank Hobson's reaction, when they brought him the data that evening, was the closest thing to excitement Amelia had ever seen from the man. He practically vibrated as he reviewed the hard drives and the handwritten ledger, his coffee growing cold beside him, his cat deficit watching from her filing cabinet throne. "This is extraordinary," he said, flipping through the notebook. With the reverence of an archaeologist handling a Dead Sea Scroll, he documented everything, every transaction, every shell company, every wire transfer. "With this ledger and the data on these hard drives, I can map every dollar he moved. I can show exactly where the money came from, where it went, and how he tried to hide it." "So you can prove it now?" Amelia asked. Frank set down the notebook and looked at her. "I can build an incredibly compelling case, but compelling is not the same as prosecutable. A defense attorney, a good one, will argue that this notebook is personal, unverified, potentially fabricated. They will say the hard drives could have been tampered with. They will attack the chain of custody. Without corroboration from inside Sterling Global, without someone who can testify that these external records match the internal financial systems of the company, a jury might have reasonable doubt. So we still need someone inside. We need the CFO, Nathan Cross. He is the one who would have processed these transactions on the company side. His testimony, combined with internal documents, combined with this notebook and the hard drives, that is a case no defense attorney in the world can beat. That is a case the SEC and the Department of Justice will fall over themselves to prosecute. One more piece, one more person, one more risk. Amelia looked at Dee. "I know Nathan's wife, Rebecca Cross. We have been to the same company events for years. I need to reach Nathan, but I cannot go through official channels. Alexander would know instantly." Dee nodded. "Then you go through Rebecca, wife to wife, mother to mother." That was exactly what she did. Thursday morning, Amelia called Rebecca Cross. She kept it vague and personal, just enough to open the door without revealing what lay behind it. "Rebecca, it is Amelia Sterling. I need to talk to Nathan about something important, something about the company. I cannot explain over the phone, and I need it to stay between us. Can he meet me?" Rebecca, who was a perceptive woman, married to a man she knew had been troubled about his work for months, did not ask unnecessary questions. "I will have him call you," she said, and then quietly, "Are you okay?" "I will be," Amelia said. "I hope." Nathan Cross met Amelia at a diner in White Plains on Thursday afternoon. He had chosen the location, somewhere far enough from Manhattan, that the odds of running into anyone from Sterling Global were close to zero. He arrived in a wrinkled button-down shirt, no tie, looking like a man who had not slept well in a very long time. He was 45 years old, with the slightly worn appearance of a middle management executive who had spent 2 decades in the trenches of corporate finance. He was not a bold man. He was not a brave man. He was the kind of man who followed rules and colored inside the lines and coached his daughter's soccer team on Saturdays. Under ordinary circumstances, he would never have agreed to meet the CEO's wife at a diner to discuss things that could end his career. But these were not ordinary circumstances. They sat in a booth near the back. Amelia ordered tea she did not drink. Nathan ordered coffee. He stirred without tasting. They sat in silence for a moment, two people on the edge of something that could not be taken back. I am going to be direct with you, Nathan, because I do not have time to be anything else, Amelia said. I know that Alexander is embezzling from Sterling Global. I know about the shell companies. I know about the offshore accounts. I know about the villa in Portofino that was purchased with 25 million euros of stolen money. I have documentation, external documentation, bank statements, property records, and a handwritten ledger where Alexander recorded every transaction. Nathan's face went through 3 distinct phases in the span of about 5 seconds. Disbelief, as if she had just told him the sky was green. Then recognition, the look of a man who is hearing out loud something he has suspected in silence. Then something that surprised Amelia. Relief. The profound, full-body relief of a person who has been carrying a secret that is too heavy and is finally being told they can set it down. I have known something was wrong for over a year, he said, his voice low. Transactions that did not make sense. Consulting fees to companies I could not verify existed. Wire transfers to accounts I had no documentation for. The numbers did not add up. They never added up. Why did you not say anything? Nathan looked at his coffee. I raised it once, 14 months ago. I brought a list of discrepancies to Alexander in his office and asked for explanations. He shut the door. He looked at me with those eyes of his. You know the look. The one that makes you feel like you're about 2 inches tall. And he told me that there were aspects of the business that were above my pay grade. He said if I wanted to keep my position, I should focus on the numbers I was told to focus on and stop asking questions about numbers that were not my concern. He paused. I have a wife, 2 kids, a mortgage in Westchester that takes half my paycheck. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself the CEO of a billion-dollar company would not be stupid enough to steal from himself. I told myself a lot of things that let me sleep at night. But you knew. Yeah. He met her eyes. I knew, and I have hated myself for staying quiet. Every quarterly report I signed, I knew something was wrong, and I signed it anyway because I was afraid. Nathan, what I am about to ask you could cost you everything. Your job, your reputation, possibly worse. I cannot promise you it will be safe, but I can promise you that what Alexander is doing will come out eventually, with or without your help. And when it does, everyone who stayed silent will have to answer for that silence. The question is whether you want to be the man who helped stop it or the man who looked the other way. Nathan stared at his coffee for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady. My daughter is 9. Last week she came home from school and told me about a project where they had to write about someone they admired. She wrote about me. His eyes glistened. She wrote about me, Amelia. She said I was the most honest person she knew. And I sat there reading it and I thought, if she ever finds out what I have been ignoring at work, she will never look at me the same way again. He straightened in his seat. What do you need from me? Internal documents, wire transfer records, board authorizations, the real ledgers that show where the money went inside the company, everything that matches what I already have from outside. And then what? Then we take it to the federal government, the SEC and the Department of Justice. Once it is in their hands, Alexander cannot suppress it. I need protection, Nathan said. Legal protection. In writing. Before I hand over anything, I am not being brave for nothing. I have a family. you will have it. I have an attorney who specializes in exactly this kind of case. She will make sure you are protected under the Whistleblower Protection Act. Nathan nodded slowly. When? Saturday. This Saturday. Can you get the documents by then? I can have them tonight. I have been quietly making copies for months, just in case. I guess some part of me always knew this day was coming. They shook hands in the parking lot of the diner. Nathan drove north toward Westchester and his family. Amelia drove south toward the city and hers. For the first time in weeks, she felt something she had almost forgotten the texture of: hope. Friday afternoon. Everything was falling into place. Sandra Palmer had the divorce filing prepared, ready to submit the moment the federal case went public. Frank Hobson had assembled a preliminary forensic report that was devastating in its detail. Nathan Cross had agreed to testify and was gathering internal documents. The case was building towards something that felt, for the first time, unstoppable. Alexander came home from work that evening in what Amelia recognized as his performance mode. Extra attentive, extra charming. He cooked dinner, badly, his signature pasta with too much garlic, and he talked about baby names and nursery furniture as if they were a normal couple having a normal evening. He rubbed her feet while they watched television. He told her she was beautiful. Amelia played along. She had become very good at playing along. Two actors on a stage, performing a marriage for an audience of 0. Then, over the pasta, Alexander said something that turned her blood to ice. Oh, I almost forgot. Big news at the office today. I hired a new chief legal officer, David Blackwell. He starts Monday. Amelia kept her fork moving, kept her face neutral. David Blackwell? I do not think I know the name. He is the best corporate defense attorney on the Eastern Seaboard. Harvard Law, 20 years of experience. With the company expanding into European markets, I figured we need someone world-class protecting our interests. That sounds smart, Amelia said, and took a bite of pasta. The moment she was alone in the bathroom, she locked the door, sat on the edge of the tub, and texted D. He hired David Blackwell. Google him. Now. Dee's response came in 4 minutes. It was a text message that read like a verdict. David Blackwell. Former federal prosecutor turned corporate defense attorney. Specializes in making corporate fraud cases disappear. His clients include 3 Fortune 500 CEOs who were investigated by the SEC and walked free. His firm charges $4,000 an hour. He is the person you hire when you know the feds are coming and you want to make sure they find nothing. Then a second text. He did not hire this guy for European expansion. He hired him because he knows someone is looking at the books. Amelia sat on the edge of that bathtub and felt the hope she had carefully built over the past week start to crack. If Blackwell got inside Sterling Global on Monday, the first thing he would do was a comprehensive internal audit, not to find problems, but to erase them. He would identify every digital trail Alexander had left. He would scrub records, rewrite transaction histories, and build a legal fortress so thick that Frank Hobson's forensic report would bounce off it like a rubber ball. And he would identify Nathan Cross as a vulnerability and neutralize him. A quiet conversation, a generous severance package tied to a non-disclosure agreement, or, if Nathan had already taken documents, a criminal referral for theft of proprietary company information. They had until Monday. 72 hours, and the clock was already ticking. The next 72 hours were the worst of Amelia's life, worse than finding the text messages, worse than the parking lot behind the Kroger. Because what happened next was not a single blow. It was a series of blows, each one landing before she had recovered from the last, each one stripping away another layer of protection until she was standing alone with nothing but her anger and her $80,000 and a baby kicking furiously inside her. Friday night, 11 o'clock. Alexander was supposed to be asleep. Amelia had waited until his breathing was slow and steady before slipping out of bed and padding barefoot down the hallway to his study. There was one more file she needed, a folder of account numbers she had seen during her first sweep but had not photographed because she had run out of time. She eased the study door open. She turned on the desk lamp. She opened the filing cabinet and found the folder. She was photographing the third page with her cheap CVS camera. The click of the shutter, absurdly loud in the silent apartment, when the door opened behind her. Alexander was standing there in his bathrobe. His hair was mussed. His feet were bare. His eyes were wide awake. For a moment, neither of them moved. His gaze traveled from her face to the open filing cabinet to the camera in her hand. The silence was the loudest sound Amelia had ever heard. "What are you doing?" His voice was quiet, not angry. That was worse. Anger she could have handled. This was something else, calculation, assessment. A predator deciding whether the movement in the brush was prey or threat. "I could not sleep," Amelia said. Her voice sounded remarkably steady,